The keys felt cold in Lena's palm as she stood in front of the house no one wanted. Cracked walls. A broken gate. No electricity. Her parents had smiled while handing it to her, then turned to celebrate her sister's luxury apartment. Lena didn't cry that night. What hurt most wasn't the house. It was realizing they had already decided who mattered. Lena stood quietly as her parents held up Case's apartment keys, smiling proudly while everyone clapped and cheered. Case has really made the family proud, they said, their voices full of admiration. Then they turned to Lena. And here's something simple for you, they added with a laugh. Lena forced a smile, her fingers brushing against the cold metal of the house keys they handed her. Around her, relatives whispered and giggled, making jokes about the old, broken house she was supposed to call her own. Each laugh felt sharper than any insult she had ever heard. She felt the weight of their words settle in her chest, heavier than the keys she held. Nobody seemed to notice her hurt, or maybe they didn't care. Lena looked at the small, cracked house they had given her. No electricity, peeling paint, a broken gate, and realized this was never about fairness. It was never about giving her something equal. It was a reminder of where she stood in the family's eyes. Still, she accepted the keys without argument, keeping her thoughts to herself, knowing even then that this was the first cut, the first moment she would remember as the start of something much bigger. Lena pushed open the heavy, creaking door of the old house and stepped inside. Dust covered every corner, and the air smelled faintly of damp wood and years of neglect. Some doors were locked, their keys missing, and papers lay scattered on the floor as if forgotten long ago. In the yard, strange boundary stones stuck out of the overgrown grass, marking lines Lena didn't yet understand. She felt the weight of the house pressing on her, a mix of sadness and curiosity. Neighbors peeked from their windows and porches, not with pity, but with quiet interest, watching her move through the rooms. One elderly woman leaned over the fence and whispered just loud enough for Lena to hear. "So they finally gave it to you." Those words, simple as they were, sent a shiver through her. It wasn't encouragement or welcome. It was curiosity, maybe even judgment. Lena looked around the house again, noticing small things she hadn't before. A broken handle, a faded painting, the way the sunlight barely reached the corners. Each detail felt like a secret the house was keeping from her. And for the first time, doubt crept into her mind. Why had her parents given her this place? Was it really hers, or was it another way to show her place in the family? She held the rusted doorknob, feeling its cold metal, and realized the house was more than just walls and a roof. It was a puzzle, a story she had to uncover, and maybe the key to understanding everything they had never told her. Every morning, Lena scrolled through her phone and saw Case's posts. The apartment gleamed in every picture, modern furniture, sparkling windows, and every corner perfectly decorated. Case wrote captions about starting from nothing, and how hard work pays off, subtle words that seemed to compare her life to Lena's. Their parents commented with hearts and proud emojis, praising Case over and over. Lena noticed something that hurt more than the posts themselves. She wasn't in a single picture. Not a smile, not a mention, not even a tag. Messages she sent to Case went unanswered. Calls weren't returned. At first, Lena tried to convince herself it was normal sibling rivalry, that maybe Case was just busy enjoying her new life. But the cold truth settled in slowly. This wasn't carelessness. It was deliberate. The silence, the exclusion, the way everyone celebrated Case and ignored her. Everything was meant to erase her from the story. Each post, each laugh shared online, reminded Lena that she was invisible in the family's eyes. She felt small, as if the distance wasn't just physical but emotional, a wall built on purpose. Yet beneath the hurt, a spark of clarity grew. Lena realized that while Case paraded her life, the applause and praise were for a version of the family that wanted to forget Lena ever existed. That thought stung, but it also made Lena pay attention. She began noticing patterns, thinking about what Case really had, what was real and what was given for show. The more she watched, the more she understood. Silence could be weaponized, and Lena wasn't going to let herself be erased without knowing why. Lena decided to spend the afternoon cleaning the backyard, trying to make the old house feel a little less abandoned. She pulled weeds, swept the cracked stone path, and lifted fallen branches, when something hard struck her shovel. Curious, she dug around and uncovered a rusted metal box, almost buried under dirt and leaves. The box was heavy, covered in dust, and its lock barely held. Heart-pounding, Lena pried it open and found a stack of old papers and faded land markers inside. She squinted at the documents, her fingers trembling as she read names she recognized, family members, distant relatives, even names she had only heard in passing. The dates didn't match the stories her parents had always told her. Some papers were older than she imagined, showing land divisions and plots she had never been told existed. The markers were carved with symbols and numbers, some half-buried, some lying in strange spots in the yard. Lena's mind raced. The house she had thought was just a small, forgotten place suddenly felt different. It wasn't just old. It was central, sitting right on a larger piece of land she had never known about. Questions she didn't have answers for crowded her thoughts. Why had no one mentioned this? Why were the documents hidden? And why did the dates not match the story her parents had told at the dinner table? Looked around the yard again, noticing how the markers lined up in ways she hadn't seen before, almost like pieces of a puzzle. A shiver ran through her. Something bigger was here, something important that had been deliberately kept from her. The house was more than just walls and a gate. It was a key, a secret waiting to be unlocked, and Lena knew, in that moment, that everything she thought about her family and her place in it might be about to change forever. Lena couldn't stop thinking about the metal box and the papers she had found. She knew she needed answers, but her parents weren't talking, and Kesa acted like none of it mattered. One morning, she decided to visit the local land office and speak to a surveyor, someone who had no reason to lie. The surveyor, an older man with careful eyes, listened as Lena explained what she had found. He nodded slowly and said, "You're standing on something more than just this house." He pulled out maps, old surveys, and documents Lena had never seen before. Pointing to the land, he showed her how the house sat at the exact center of several adjoining plots, land that had been inherited by the family generations ago. Lena's heart raced. "This means," she began, but the man continued. The land was divided in stories, in words spoken to relatives, not on paper. Legally, the ownership was never fully transferred. Lena felt a chill run down her spine. Her parents had handed her the house like it was a small, insignificant gift, but the truth was the opposite. The land she stood on, the house everyone mocked, was far more valuable and important than anyone had admitted. It wasn't just the walls or the yard, it was the center of something much bigger. She thought about Case's apartment, the praise, the applause. Suddenly, it all looked different. The silence, the exclusion, the laughter. It wasn't just favoritism. It had been a mask, hiding the truth about what really belonged to Lena. She realized her parents had never wanted to know her real value. The realization hit hard, but it also ignited a spark inside her. For the first time, Lena understood that the house they mocked wasn't a punishment. It was a secret waiting to be claimed, and she was the only one who had been blind until now. Lena couldn't stop thinking about the truth the surveyor had told her. She began looking closer at Case's apartment, the one everyone praised. The more she checked, the more she realized something shocking. The apartment wasn't really hers. Every loan, every document, every payment was tied back to Lena's land. The house everyone laughed at. Kesa had never stolen anything, but she had enjoyed the rewards without ever asking questions, without ever caring to know the truth. Lena's chest tightened as she held the papers, seeing clearly how everything connected. One evening, she decided to reach out to Kesa. She sent a simple message. "Do you know whose land really made this possible?" Hours passed with no reply. Finally, a message came back. Kesa laughed short and sharp. "Old village nonsense. Stop overthinking," she wrote. That laugh hit Lena harder than any insult ever had. It wasn't just a dismissal. It was a reminder that Kesa had never wanted to understand, had never cared, and had taken her part of the story for granted. But instead of breaking her, the laugh became a turning point. Lena felt something shift inside her. She realized she didn't need Kesa to understand. She didn't need her parents' praise either. The truth was in her hands, in the documents, the land, and the house they all thought was worthless. Kesa's laughter, meant to belittle, only made Lena more determined. She could see clearly now. She was stronger than they had ever imagined, and she didn't need anyone's permission to claim what was rightfully hers. The house, the land, and even Kesa's apartment. They were all part of a story Lena was finally ready to rewrite, on her terms. Lena didn't rush. She didn't yell or accuse anyone. She focused on the house, taking small steps every day. She cleaned the rooms one by one, fixed the broken gate, and cleared the yard of weeds and old debris. She carefully organized the documents she had found, registering them properly, making sure everything was official and under her name. Slowly, the house began to change. It still wasn't fancy, but it looked cared for, alive, and important. Neighbors who once whispered and watched from a distance now looked at her with respect. Some came over, asking questions about the land, complimenting the work she had done, even offering small help. Word spread quietly, and developers started visiting, curious about the property and the land around it. They asked questions, took notes, and Lena answered carefully, letting the house speak for itself. She didn't need to confront Kesa or her parents yet. She let her actions do the talking. Meanwhile, the same parents who had ignored her, dismissed her, and laughed at the house suddenly called every day. Their voices were sweet, too polite, too eager. Invitations, questions about her day, offers of help, they poured in like never before. Lena listened quietly, aware of the shift, aware that the power was no longer in their hands. The change was subtle but undeniable. She didn't boast, she didn't threaten. She simply moved forward, piece by piece, claiming her place and letting the world notice. The house that once symbolized neglect and favoritism now became a quiet force, a sign that Lena had more control than anyone had realized. The family who had ignored her, the sister who had laughed, suddenly, the tables were turning, and Lena was in charge without ever raising her voice. The family gathered for dinner, the house filled with chatter, clinking glasses, and the usual polite smiles. Lena sat quietly, observing, while her parents tried to make everything seem normal. Halfway through the meal, her father slid a document across the table, saying softly, "Sign this for the sake of family unity, Lena. It's just a formality." The words were calm, but Lena could feel the pressure in the room. Everyone was watching, expecting her to agree without question, expecting her to stay in her place. She picked up the paper, her eyes scanning the words. Then she spoke, her voice steady, quiet, but cutting through the polite noise. "Why is my land listed as collateral?" The question hung in the air. Silence fell like a heavy curtain. Forks paused midair, glasses stopped clinking, and even the murmurs faded. Her parents' faces froze. Kesa, who had smiled confidently just moments before, suddenly stiffened. The room shifted. The carefully built mask of unity and control crumbled in an instant. Kesa looked at Lena, her eyes wide, realization dawning slowly. Every post, every boast about the apartment, every proud comment from their parents. She had never noticed the truth. The apartment she flaunted, the life she thought was hers, had been built on Lena's unseen sacrifice, on land that Lena had quietly claimed and restored. The laughter, the exclusion, the applause, they had blinded everyone to the real story. Now in this one moment, the truth was impossible to ignore. Lena didn't shout. She didn't beg or threaten. She simply asked one question, and the quiet power in that question shifted everything. The room that had once laughed at her, that had ignored her, now trembled with the weight of reality. For the first time, Kesa saw clearly, and Lena felt the balance of the family begin to tilt in her favor. Not through anger, but through calm, undeniable truth. Lena folded the paper slowly, her hands steady, her eyes calm. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't accuse anyone. She simply looked at her parents and said, "I will not sign." The words were simple, but the meaning was heavy, carrying years of quiet truth and careful preparation. She laid out the facts one by one, the documents she had uncovered, the land registrations she had filed, the maps that proved the house and surrounding plots belonged to her legally. Every detail was precise, clear, and undeniable. She didn't threaten. She didn't demand revenge. She let the truth speak for itself. Her parents' smiles faltered. The control they had relied on for decades, over her, over Kesa, over the story of the family, crumbled in silence. Calls and messages, once casual and sweet, now carried panic. They realized, too late, that their power was gone. The law was already moving, the land officially under Lena's name, the documents airtight. No clever words, no pleading, no manipulation could undo what had been quietly built while they ignored her. Kesa, who had always thought she held the advantage, sat frozen. her pride collapsing around her. She remembered every boast, every post, every praise she had received for an apartment built on Lena's work and sacrifices. The truth hit her fully for the first time. Her tears came quietly at first, then harder, as she finally understood how favoritism had blinded her. She had believed she was the one favored, the one trusted, the one who deserved it all. But she had been blind to Lena's patience, Lena's preparation, and Lena's power. The room was still, the family stunned. Lena didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply stood there, calm and composed, holding what was always hers. Ownership was no longer a secret. Spoken aloud, proven on paper, and recognized by law, it could not be taken back. For Lena, the victory was quiet, absolute, and irreversible. For the family, the reality of their choices, their favoritism, and their neglect finally hit, and there was nothing they could do to change it. Lena stepped outside early in the morning, the first light of sunrise spilling over the yard. The house, once cracked and forgotten, now stood steady, surrounded by neat paths and cleared boundaries. She didn't feel the need to shout, to show off, or to prove anything. The air was calm, the birds quietly singing, and for the first time, Lena felt the full weight of what she had built. She looked at the land stretching beyond the yard, the markers she had uncovered, the documents she had registered, and she understood. This house was never small. It wasn't a punishment, and it wasn't a joke. It had been a test, a way to see if she could see the truth, hold her ground, and claim what was rightfully hers. The sun climbed slowly, casting golden light on the walls and the yard. Lena breathed deeply, feeling grounded in a way she never had before. The laughter, the jokes, the favoritism, the exclusion, they were behind her now. She didn't need approval, applause, or recognition. The house, the land, the work she had done, they spoke louder than any words could. Even her family, who had ignored her, mocked her, or taken what they thought was theirs, could no longer diminish her. Value, Lena realized, doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't depend on who notices or who applauds. It grows quietly, patiently, and it shows itself in time. She stood on the porch, watching the sun rise over the land, feeling calm, strong, and untouchable. The house, which everyone had once called small, was the center of everything she had gained: clarity, strength, and independence. Lena smiled softly, knowing that the journey had changed her, that she had claimed her place without needing anyone else to approve it. The house wasn't small, it was proof that patience, truth, and courage could rise, even when no one else believed in it.